welcome back to the All About You podcast. Today my guest is Marla, and she's going to share her very personal story of coming to terms with many challenges in her life, overcoming adversity, and how these things have shaped her as a person. Marla, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Sheila, thank you for having me.
Marla, you were originally from the US, but now you're living in a very hot I don't know what the temperature is today. Probably it's going to be like 36 degrees or something. The first thing I wanted to mention is you actually reached out to me. We've actually known each other for quite some time, but you reached out to me about being a guest on the podcast. Can you explain why?
Yes. Well, I actually initially reached out to you a few years ago, and then I realized I just wasn't ready at that time to share and go deeper into what I want to talk about today. And I reached out to you again recently because I reached a good place in my journey where I'm just ready and clear mentally, physically, and emotionally to talk about, well, the challenges that I've had in my life, the teachable moments, and hopefully how my experiences can be helpful to your listener.
Just before we started this recording, we were actually talking about the reason I do this podcast, and you're a guest on the podcast as well. And I always say, if one of the conversations on my podcast, and I've no idea in whose ears this podcast or eyes on YouTube ends up in, if I can help to educate, inspire, or motivate one person through a story they've heard on my podcast, I am more than happy. Now, I just know that's going to be the situation here. I'm not sure where we're going to be going with this because I don't know all of your story.
Right.
So Marla, where are we going to start?
Where are we going to start? Well, let me start giving you a little background about who I am as a person. I am someone who's always been a bleeding heart. I am someone who's always rooted for the underdog, and I'm someone who's always wanted to help. My professional background is in nonprofit management, specifically in fundraising. In the States, I worked for quite a few nonprofit agencies, but mainly focused on education, international issues, and health. And those three content areas have really been the focal point of my interest throughout my entire life, both professionally and personally. So that, I would say, in a lot of ways is the foundation for who I am as a person. My professional background, well, actually, I wouldn't say not the foundation, but a combination of what my personal interests have been as well, as far as always wanting to help people. I've always volunteered every chance I could get, and I've done volunteer work on an international level. So I definitely see my life experiences in those content areas being, I guess at that point, I would say the foundation for where I am right now in life, and realizing that where I am as far as wanting to create impact, knowing that at this stage of life, I'm in my early, well, I guess 53 isn't really early 50s anymore. So I'm in my early to mid 50s. So I have plenty of life experience at this point where really my story is the impact that I hope to create with a listener or anybody in this world to have some sort of, again, social justice impact or whatever, and a legacy as well.
Okay, so where does your story begin then, Marla?
Where does my story begin? I mean, as Sheila mentioned, as you mentioned in the introduction, what I really want to talk about is a lot of the adverse challenges that I've faced over the years, and really how that shaped me to who I am at this point in life. Starting with, I would say even starting with my life in my 20s, where I've always danced to a beat of my own drum, and it's never going to be a different way. That's just who I am as a person. A little quirky, a little goofy, a little, I don't know, a little out there at times, and no patience for BS. Can I say the real word? No patience for bullshit. So that is kind of who I am in a very abridged version. I would say even, starting in my late teens, early 20s, where a lot of my peers at that time were living more traditional lives, where it had been they would after graduating university or college or what have you, they would get their traditional 9-to-5 jobs, and me, I took a different path. I took a year out. I did a very European thing, which is not that common for Americans, or wasn't that common for Americans at that time. Yes, I'm dating myself. And that was really one of the first points in my life where I had adversity, because questions were posed to me. Why aren't you getting a job? What do you mean you're going to gallivant around Europe for a year, with the backpack? What are you doing? So even something simple as that really shaped me in a lot of ways, because I had to navigate and respond to questions that, in my opinion, should never have even been a question. It was just more people passing judgment on me based on their expectations of how life should be lived. So that is a very basic example of adversity that I faced in my 20s. But on a serious note, segueing into my early 30s, that's when the shit really hit the fan. At 32, I had to advocate for myself and essentially say, no, you're wrong, to my doctor, which led to me being diagnosed with breast cancer at a young age. Initially, I was dismissed by my doctor. I was told, oh, don't worry about it. You're fine. You're too young. It's probably a fibroid, which essentially I was dismissed by a male doctor. Let me add that, by a male doctor. And that moment in life, to this day, I mean, it's been over 20 years, but I can't erase it. That moment in life made me realize how valuable your gut is. So I want to reiterate that to the listener, like, listening to your gut is key. So that's one of the learnings I want to share in this conversation. Listen to your gut, because my gut told me something was off and my gut was right. If I hadn't advocated for myself and been passive and just been like, oh, no, you're right. Everything is fine. Who knows if if I'd be here today. I don't know. But that moment at 32 led to me having a bilateral mastectomy, led to serious medical errors where I was administered the wrong medication and did almost die. At that point in life as well, you learn who's with you, because when you're in moments like that in life, that's another teachable moment. When you're going through a serious crisis or some adverse challenges, taking note to your community and to the people who are really riding the wave with you. So that's another takeaway that I would want the listener to pay attention to. Also, really take note to who's with you when the shit does hit the fan. That is so critical. Yeah, so that moment at 32 where my body changed forever really was a huge teachable moment for me and for those around me. And it helped me realize that, again, listen to your gut, be your own advocate. Doctors aren't God, and life still has to go on. Now, it took me 5, 6, maybe even 7 years before I really felt like I got my groove back in a way that felt sort of normal-ish, knowing that the word normal is really a very vague word, and I still don't understand that word to this day, because I don't think anything in my life is normal. I just think everything in my life is just the cards that I've been dealt and my reality. I mean, if I want to take it to the next step in my life, as far as where I was faced with a challenge in my late 30s, I was at high risk for ovarian cancer. So at that point in life, I had my ovaries taken out as well. And again, I had to advocate for myself. And one of the reasons I did that was because around the time that the benchmark for ovarian cancer kept elevating, at the time that was happening, my younger sister, who was also diagnosed with breast cancer, was going through her breast cancer journey. And I said to myself, I'm doing this because I want to protect my sister. If I, God forbid, had ovarian cancer, which I did not, but I took one ovary out because I had the other ovary taken out when I was a teenager. And I just wanted to protect my sister. So luckily that was negative, but I still did that to take care of her. So I would say that in a way that's almost like a third takeaway for a listener. Think of your loved ones when you are going through a very difficult place in life. What impact will the decisions that you make have on those that you care about the most? That's what I did at that moment in life as well. So we're only up to the 30s. I still have a lot more to go.
One thing I would like to add to that is nobody knows your body better than you.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if you think something is just a little bit off, something's not right, and I think, as you said, trust in your gut. I think they're calling the gut the second brain or maybe the first brain. And there are so many instances where you get this gut feeling about a person, a thing, or something. And there's a lot of research going into this about how your gut can keep you on the right track. But I just really want to say, you know your body better than anybody. If you think something is not quite right, stand your ground. Go and see a professional. Write it all down in a note so you don't get flustered when you're in front of them. Do not let them dismiss you. It's absolutely, as you say, Marla, they are not God. You know your body better than anybody, regardless of what that's about. Keep an eye, look out for any changes. Yes, our body does change through the seasons, through the years, through age, but you know your body better than anyone. So that is a great takeaway. Okay, Marla, let's go on.
Okay, yeah. No, thank you for reiterating how important that is. I also want to add, though, that through all these challenges, and again, I have a lot more to share. When you're so hyper-focused on your health, because the reality of it is, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, it's very hard to focus on anything else. So for me, in my experiences, actually in a lot of them, things for me got very overwhelming and still do get very overwhelming. My brain gets very cloudy. Hence, that has affected a lot of my personal relationships. So that's another area to think about when going through adverse experiences in life, keeping in mind that you do you. You are your number one priority. And granted, everybody in this world has shit going on. I totally understand that. Speaking from my experience, when I'm in the thick of something, that's my number one. And it has to be for survival. Really to survive and not even just to exist, but to live. You know, that's a huge takeaway when going through adverse challenges, really deciphering the difference between existing and living. Because for a long time, I'll be honestly, up until a few months ago, I forgot how to live. I've been existing, and I'll get into that in a few moments. But just keeping that in mind, that going through adverse challenges is a lot more than advocating for yourself. It's taking notice to what you need in order to get through the mountain that's in front of you.
Marla, there is so much power in what you are saying. And we are hearing a lot now about self-care, self-love. Self-care can be anything, and as I've said before, if I see another image of somebody holding a steaming cup of coffee with both hands and a fluffy blanket, I will scream. That is self-care for one person, but that seems to be the bulk standard image. Somebody will go on to Google or
exactly,
and I'm like, okay, please, can we move on from that?
Yeah.
We've seen that too many times. It's just noise. We don't even see it.
Yeah.
Everybody's self-care is different, and everybody's idea of putting themselves first.
Right.
When you have an issue, whether it's health related or whatever, absolutely trust yourself. Put yourself first. As you said, when you're up against it, you know the people that will step up and be there for you.
Right.
You can see those that take a step back. Some people can handle it and will step forward. Other people, they will say the right things, but there's no action behind it. Very powerful, Marla.
Right. I mean, and that's okay. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, people do what they can do as they can do it, but keep in mind it may not be what you need at that moment. So getting to my 40s, at that point, just to rewind for a second, up until the age of 32, when I had my breast cancer, I was bouncing around. I love to travel. I've been to about 40 countries. I've lived in other countries as well. But one of the challenges with dealing with a serious medical issue or a serious adversity, which, sidebar, I've also dealt with the death of my father and my brother. So when you have situations like that happen in life, what you want to do for you goes on the back burner. So for me, in all of my 30s, actually I think my late 30s, if I remember correctly, my late 30s until mid 40s, I was in the States. I mean, for me to be in the States for about 10 years and not use my passport, which to this day has been the longest relationship I've ever been in, has been with my passport. That says a lot, because that was a huge loss of identity for me. And I clawed my way out of that rut that I was in, and I said, you know what, I'm going to leave my career. I left my career, to been about 7-8 years ago, as a professional fundraiser and event planner for different social justice organizations. And I'm like, you know what, I always wanted to teach, but I didn't want to teach in America because, well, I didn't want to get shot. I moved to South Korea, which was an opportunity for me to try something new. I hadn't been to Asia before. I really wanted that experience to try something new, really. So I faced adversity in that regard too, because yes, I live in Spain now as an expat, but lately I'm feeling more like an immigrant, because I really feel like I'm integrating more and more into Spanish society. I've been here 3.5 years. My life is here. I don't see it being elsewhere, but that's a whole separate conversation. But getting back to my time in Korea, another form of adversity that I faced was the cultural differences. At that time, being in my late 40s and working for a language academy, it was very rare that they had teachers of my age, because I was older than the owners. And from a cultural perspective, what I was told is that teachers in Korean society don't like having, rather bosses or the owners don't like having students that don't like having teachers that are older than them. So I faced that. Plus I had to make sure my hair didn't show any gray, and I had to be very put together, keep the girls covered and what have you. It was, very prim and proper, which is fine. I had no problem with that, but that's just a whole other layer of dealing with adversity, is really taking notice to your cultural surroundings and really checking yourself to be respectful. I mean, even now, not for me personally. I would like to say I have a high level of cultural competence. I notice now, just in observing people, the lack of respect that I see from a lot of foreigners in Spain and what have you. And I don't know if that's adversity per se, but that's an example of something that you can control by just doing your homework. So I guess another takeaway is do your homework when you're faced with a new experience. It may not be as dramatic as health related, but still, come on, be respectful. So that was something I noticed during my time in Korea. Continuing on my journey of dealing with challenges and what have you, I mentioned the cultural challenges I faced in Korea, and unfortunately that time period in my life just led to things really getting more and more unpredictable, because you realize, at least I've realized, there's very little in life that we have control over. And up until my mid-30s, I would say I was pretty much a control freak, and I kind of had to be. I was a former fundraiser, and I had to just make sure all my I's were dotted and T's are crossed when running a major gala or what have you. But after I left that world, that kind of went out the window a bit, because I was called back to the States. I had 24 hours to get there before my brother passed. When you're talking about adversity, that I hope the listener will really take this to heart. do what you can do now with relationships that maybe you want to mend, or with relationships that might have value for you at some point, because you never know until the person is gone, type of thing. My brother and I had a horrible relationship. I mean, he was not physically abusive, but I would say mentally and verbally abusive to me. It was heartbreaking because we were so close in age, and my family is so small to begin with. My brother's passing happened very fast. He passed from melanoma. Literally within 5 weeks of his second bout, he was gone. And processing the loss of a sibling that I really didn't have a relationship with is a whole other beast when it comes to dealing with adversity, because there's such a hole there. But then again, is there really a hole there if that relationship didn't really exist because of all the challenges? So it's been a lot of like back and forth mentally and emotionally, a lot of therapy for me, like just trying to understand what purpose my relationship with my brother had. You know, I think back to the time when I went through breast cancer. He did show up for me in a way that he was able to during that time. But then, you know, once the dust settled, things went back to I don't exist type of thing. Like, I don't know, for some reason he hated the fact that I was born, and, you know, really caused a lot of problems over the years. So again, talking about adversity, I feel like, again, maybe it's not adversity per se, but the challenge of not having a relationship with someone who you thought would be there, especially a male. You know, who was my older brother, and he was a lot like my father, who had passed prior from Parkinson's. The reason I'm sharing is because I think a lot of ways both of them were so aloof, and with my brother there was a deeper ick factor going on between us, that maybe that's why I've been perpetually single. But this is not a therapy session. This is just me sharing teachable moments with people. So, okay, I could do my own therapy at a separate time. No, but again, I'm sharing all this so the listener can really pay attention to, well, maybe, you know, there's somebody who I really love, but things aren't working out. Is there a way we can make it work out while we're both on this planet at the same time? Right. Yes. I mean, all I can say to that is yes. Yes. You know, I mean, with my brother, it stemmed from childhood and went on for years, so it was definitely exceptional. But, you know, I'm at a place right now where I accept what it was, and his passing, you know, has been a blessing and a curse, because there's a loss, but there's also perspective in how I can deal with relationships moving forward, and how, you know, how to look at things as things pop up coming in the rest of my life. With that being said, so I moved to Spain 3.5 years ago. You know, after my brother's passing, I was with my mother for a bit because she needed support. So I moved back to the States from Korea. I was there a year too long because of COVID. So when I finally got my visa all sorted to come here, it was 3.5 years ago. 3 months into moving here, I was diagnosed with a rare stage 4 cancer. So I am living with neuroendocrine tumors in my lungs. Perhaps that's another reason why I want to talk to you today, because I want people to know about this disease. Yes, it is cancer. It is cancer in my endocrine system. If you're confused by it, I say to people, look up Steve Jobs. It's the cancer Steve Jobs had. So just to give people an understanding of what it's about. I'm living with it because there isn't a cure. It is stage 4 because it's outside of my lung area, which it started from, but it is contained because I get a monthly injection to manage it. But talking about adversity, I would say this has been the biggest hurdle I've had to face my entire life, because it was so unexpected. And that's the thing that happens when you're dealing with adversity. You just don't know how it's going to show up. You know, is it going to be gradual? Maybe it's a relationship falling apart. Is it going to be like, surprise, you have stage 4 cancer? You just don't know. But that's another thing for the listener to really think about, is just like keep your eyes and ears open and try to be as prepared as you can be. Yeah, obviously this has changed my life completely. I'm not living the life I thought I was going to live in Spain, but I'm finally living. You know, to get back to your initial question, why did I reach out to you now? Because I'm living now. I'm not existing anymore. For the past 3 years, I've been existing. I would say up until about a few months ago, I started living again because I now understand the cards that I've been dealt. I don't accept it because it sucks, and it's total bullshit. Like, it's not fair, But the reality of it is this is my reality. So I've been able to shift mentally because I have an understanding of what is happening in my body now. And I think the shift really happened when I actually asked I have an endocrinologist and oncologist through my medical team. I asked them, I said, how many tumors do I have right now? And, I had my doctor count them, and she said 5. And I was like, oh, I thought I had more. But I was reminded by actually a dear friend who helped me through a lot of this. She said, well, remember you had surgery, So yeah, duh. That's how talk about what I was saying earlier about how cloudy you are when you're going through a health issue. Like, I forgot that I had surgery and some of those tumors were removed. So I had more. The latest and greatest shows 5, but just knowing that I know the number gives me a sense of being able to own it rather than that fear of the uncertainty for like what is going on in my body. So that I think really has helped a lot with my mental shift and being able to work towards living and not just existing. Again, I haven't accepted these cards, but I'm understanding the cards that I've been dealt more and more each day. And that's something for the listener to really think about. Like, once you're able to get a little clarity around the adversity or the shit that you're dealing with, that, in my opinion, is one of the very first steps in order to be able to move forward and not feel so stuck, like you're in this really vicious time warp because you don't know where you're coming and where you're going type of thing. Yeah. And so it's been a lot, and again, I'm not throwing myself a pity party here. I'm really not. I really feel my purpose now is, I hate just saying raise awareness, because awareness to me is not immeasurable. And I think that comes a lot from my fundraising background and just wanting to create impact. But knowing that where I am right now in my journey, I do want to create impact. And as a previous social justice person who's living in a very, very messy world, I realize where I can create the most impact now is really looking at my own story. That is really why I wanted to have this conversation today. And that's actually led to like where I am with how I'm channeling it right now. I'm working on a memoir. The memoir, I don't have a title for it yet, but the theme is overcoming adversity with grace and humor. I don't know if my sense of humor has come out that much in this conversation, but it's there. I definitely have a pretty wicked sense of humor, and I love that about me. So that is definitely part of the conversation. I mean, that's part of the theme in the memoir, and I'm starting the second iteration. So give me, I don't know, another year or two. Maybe I'll have something to present to the world. But I'm doing that, and I write, and I'm doing podcasts and what have you, just to be a resource for people. Was the first step in creating any type of support is really feeling validated, I think. And the space I want to create for people is really a space to feel validated based on whatever adversity they're facing as well.
I mean, Marla, I am sitting here listening to your story.
Yeah.
I knew a little bit about you, but I knew nowhere near what you have talked about this morning. And I'm just sitting here thinking, what an incredible woman you are. And I'm just thinking, sharing your story with other people, the fact that, okay, you are going through these many, many issues.
Yeah.
However, you feel it's very, very important that you share your story so that if anybody else has to come across medical issues of their own, they can listen to your conversation. But the fact that you are, okay, I'm going through this, but I'm actually going to sit down with Sheila this morning and I'm going to talk about my situation in the hope it helps somebody else. That is just incredible.
Well, thank you, but I want to share more than just a lot more than, there's a lot more to me. I'm a lot more than cancer girl, and I think I've claimed that identity for so much, whether I like it or not, but I'm trying to push it back more because I need to do that for me. You know, my cancer isn't going away. It's always going to be there. But I'm trying to tap into my creativity more. I'm trying to get out and about more, trying to live more, maybe travel a little bit more. So it's a lot more than me being, quote unquote, a support. Not a support, because I feel it's just more, well, actually, I don't know what the right word is. Just more a space, you know, for people to hear a story of someone who's learning to navigate challenges throughout life, because I don't have a choice. You know, to answer your question, I don't feel I have an option but to share my story. And I think that stems from the social justice person in me. You know, I've always been somebody who's wanted to create impact. I want to have a purpose in life. I want to leave a legacy. That's a really big driving factor for me, is wanting to leave a legacy, because, you know, I do think about mortality a lot, but it's also keeping me going.
I mean, one question I have got for you is, you're writing your story, and you said you've probably got another year before it's finished.
Yeah, I'm being snarky, I don't know.
But for you having to go right back to the beginning and literally go through your thoughts and your feelings and the facts and everything that happened, how are you finding that? Is it, I don't want to say easy, but how are you navigating that experience of going back to the beginning and going, okay, this happened in this year and then that happened? How are you finding that experience? That's
a really good question. It's actually been pretty easy. I mean, just to give a little teaser to the listener, like my first chapter, I'm calling it Who the F Am I? You know, when I'm really going into my different periods of my development, like as a teenager, I wore black all the time, and I went through my quote-unquote goth phase. And we'll talk about different periods of like relationships with people and questioning parts of my identity as well. And then I've just been from there able to let it flow into other parts, because adversity, again, is a lot more than the health challenges I've faced. You know, I have one chapter, you don't have to give birth to be called mom, because physically I haven't been able to give children and to have children, but I've been a mother figure in a lot of different ways. So I've just been able to really touch upon different parts of my life from that foundation of really looking at my own identity first, to then have that just flow into the other parts of my life. So it's actually been pretty easy to do. And it's actually been fun. Like, I love the titles that I come up with. Like, one title I have for my chapter with breast cancer is I'm on my third pair of boobs. What you do for work doesn't define you. You know, so yeah, it's good.
Marla, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to add?
I hope I didn't ramble too much. I tend to do that.
I think there is so much valuable information, and it's an incredible personal story you have told. And my one wish, as I said at the beginning, we've got no idea where this podcast ends up. If one person has any concerns about any health issues, trust your gut. Go and speak to somebody, make your notes before you go so you don't get flustered, and trust your gut.
Absolutely. So along with those lines, to piggyback on that, I would just encourage the listener to really pay attention and take note, pun intended, not intended, to all the teachable takeaways that I shared in this conversation, because it's my hope that it might have some value to whatever situation they're going through as well.
Marla, thank you so much for being a guest. We've known each other a long time, and the fact that you reached out and you said now is the time.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't quite know what to say after that conversation. I'm going to be obviously editing this podcast, not that there's very much to edit out, but I'm just sitting here in front of an incredibly strong woman, and I feel very honoured that Marla has come onto the podcast and told her story. So I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed that conversation, because I don't think that's right. What I hope is that from Marla's conversation if you've got any health issues you're not sure about, make some notes and go and see a health professional. I'm sure Marla would agree with me on that. Trust your gut. You know you better than anybody. Okay, so let's get on to the boring stuff now. Please subscribe for future episodes or whatever platform you are listening to. It is free. And please, 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 this is the takeaway, share this podcast with absolutely everybody. Just go on to whatever platform, there'll be a share button, and please just send that to everybody, because if one person goes to see a medical professional about something they're uneasy about, we've done our job. So please, please do share this podcast. And if you want to tell your story, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's get your story out.